Hello out there in internet land. Welcome to this week's episode of the P&J's F1 Formula 1 chat. I'm your host, Phil Lamington, and sitting beside me, about 1.5 meters because of social distancing rules. Fuck Anastasia Palaszczuk. Anyway, he is the James Hunt to my Nicky Lauda, is my intellectual sparring partner. JB, how are you, JB?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm refreshed. Well, not really fresh. We were up till like 1 o'clock in the morning watching Formula 1, but what else would you rather be doing on a Sunday night?
True. About as fresh as the Queensland State of Origin team.
we're about as beaten up as the Queensland Origin team, yeah.
In the press alone.
That's it.
So, late last night, early this morning, we got to watch the Austrian GP as opposed to the Styrian GP that was last weekend.
Mm-hmm. Funnily enough, in the same location, though.
Yeah, but with a far better version of the national anthem to kick it off.
It was quite awesome.
That was something spectacular.
That was fantastic for those who didn't see it. It was a Metallica-esque riff, performed by a full-on rock band, which was pretty awesome. Well, people were jumping out of the sky, literally. And
Yeah,
Austria just doesn't give a fuck. They're just like, we do metal concerts and skydiving every day.
You could tell it was a Red Bull event because they're just throwing all the no fucks.
They did not care.
Just threw all the non-fucks at it.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
As it also was the race. It was quite fantastic as well.
They turned it on this time. The cure for the DRS train seems to be stepping the tyre compounds down a step.
Yes.
Because we didn't get the big old DRS train like last week. It was battles up and down the field like old school racing. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, this race really did feel like Formula 1 in 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
Like you still had that one car that just went off into the distance that, performed the Michael.
Yeah.
But you had battles all the way through the midfield. You had battles to see who was going to be on the podium.
You had strategy battles too. You had people starting, a hard tyre or a medium tyre, or are we going to do a one stop, are we going to do a two stop? It was a proper strategy battle out there, and some people got it right and some people got it wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So, Max Verstappen came first in the race.
Another domination, 2
Yeah.
weeks in a row. That's the full 50 points for him, or
Yep.
51 points. Did he get the fastest lap as well? I think he did.
I think he did.
Yeah.
And then Valtteri Bottas came second in the Mercedes.
That was a decent drive from him.
It was a
actually.
solid drive.
Yeah.
It was a solid drive. And then Lando Norris in third for McLaren.
The
And
driver of the
driver of the
day.
day. And he deserved it. He did really well.
His whole weekend was brilliant.
Yeah.
They were maybe sandbagging a little bit in practice because they weren't really anywhere. But then he comes out in Q3 and he's 4/100ths off pole position off Max Verstappen, starting on the front row for the first time in his career. The first time McLaren's been on the front row since Brazil 2012. And he did everything in his power to keep that McLaren up in the podium positions, and even with a 5-second penalty, a very questionable 5-second penalty, he did it. He drove the arse off it. He battled the Mercedes all day and wound up even out driving Lewis Hamilton,
Yeah.
which was goddamn impressive.
Yes. And he clearly showed that the McLaren has got something completely outclassed the Ferrari too, which, I mean, you're a McLaren supporter, I'm a Ferrari supporter. And it was a little bit sad to see the Ferraris being rather outclassed by the McLaren. But I will also say this. Though I'm not a McLaren supporter, I'm a Ferrari supporter. I was super proud that Norris was on the podium.
I was super proud of Norris, and I was equally as proud of Daniel Ricciardo finally finding some semblance of form after last week.
Yeah, well, he held off Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, and it took until the final lap of the race for Carlos Sainz to get him as well. So.
Yeah.
And Sergio snuck past him as well. I didn't see that in the broadcast, but, a good day. A good day for those fans in orange and not just the ones in Max Verstappen shirts.
Yeah, that's right. In fourth place was Lewis Hamilton. He had a slightly damaged car, but I don't think
he lacked overall pace all
Yeah.
weekend. I don't think you can blame that. I mean, you probably could.
He probably has.
Losing, having to hand the position to Bottas and maybe ultimately losing out to Lando, you could probably blame that on the damage, but overall, all weekend, he wasn't really anywhere, was he?
Yeah, he wasn't switched on.
He's struggling for answers now,
Yeah.
and you can tell he's looking real tense lately.
And then in fifth was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari.
He drove brilliantly.
Yeah, he had a solid weekend all weekend.
Ferrari pulled the big surprise thing. They had a weird game plan. They almost intentionally got eliminated in Q2 so they could put Carlos on the hard tyre, because this week's hard tyre was last week's medium? Yeah. So they already had all that data pretty much for the same compound, and Carlos ran 50 laps on that hard tyre until he finally came in and put the medium on light fuel, and just like Charles Leclerc did last week, just lit it back up through the field, and it paid off. A very good drive to fifth place.
And the Ferrari does have some kind of pace. It's got something in there.
Yeah.
But it's very temperamental. It's much like the McLaren. The McLaren is very temperamental as well. And that is why Ricciardo is struggling, despite how much Fox Motorsports likes to sit there and stir up shit, and so with Paul di Resta, fuck you all. But they're both temperamental cars. That's why they're not up fighting against the Red Bull and the Mercedes. But they've got their own championship going on between the pair of them.
That's it. I think the Ferrari, the stars needed to align a little bit. But they figured it out last week with Charles Leclerc. I think Charles Leclerc was the test run. And then they just did the same thing with Carlos. They're like, well, you put the softer compound on for the end on a lighter fuel load, and the car likes it a lot more.
Yeah.
So it was almost a carbon copy of what Charles did last week, and good on them. It was a good strategy call 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Not often we say that.
Yeah, especially with Ferrari.
Yeah.
In sixth place was Sergio Perez, but I actually think he might have finished a little bit higher up the grid, but had a 5-second penalty.
Times two. He had two 5-second penalties. After him himself was allegedly forced off the track, trying to get around the outside of Lando Norris on lap 4. Bumped off the track. Norris didn't touch him, by the way. And Paul di Resta made a good point. I know you just told him to go fuck himself, but Paul di Resta made a great point. Like, if you're going to go around the outside knowing there's a gravel trap on the outside, it's in your hands.
Yeah.
Like, the same thing we said about Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton for the first 3 or 4 races of this year. When Max puts his car on the inside, he forces Lewis to make the choice around the outside.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same as what happens down at turn 4. You know, if you're going to go around the outside, it's in your hands. I don't think, you could maybe argue that there should have been maybe half a metre more space, but if you're going to, you wouldn't do it. You can go towards a gravel trap here, but if that was Singapore or Baku and there was a concrete wall, you wouldn't do it.
No.
Like, it's in your hands. Like, the driver on the outside has every opportunity to lift.
Yeah.
And I think the FIA was a little bit glad-handed in the dishing out of their penalties this weekend. But beyond that, Sergio also bumped Charles Leclerc off in carbon copy fashion twice.
Yeah. He can't say anything about Norris when he does the exact same thing to Charles Leclerc. That's
twice.
Twice.
And I think Norris bumping him off put him on tilt.
Yeah.
He just drove on tilt for the rest of the race. He really wasn't comfortable after that. He was probably frustrated. It showed in his driving style. He definitely wasn't the cool, level-headed tail gunner that he was for the last few races, but I'm sure Christian Horner will sit him down and calm him down, and he'll be back at Silverstone, I'm sure.
And then in 7th, you've got Daniel Ricciardo in the other McLaren.
Yeah, this is pretty much what should have happened last week, but for his engine glitch. qualified 13th and shot up the field and showed some genuine pace. I think the softer tyre actually helped him. I think a lot of the drivers ahead of him struggled with their strategies and struggled with their tyres a lot more than the McLaren seemed to.
Yeah.
So he was definitely helped by that. And, you know, every solid point scoring performance now is just a little bit more confidence and a little bit more progression.
And a little less for Fox Motorsports to whinge about.
Exactly, a little less bitching from the keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
I'm happy with him. Happy with both the boys. Yeah. Good drives.
Charles Leclerc came 8th in the other Ferrari. He had an okay weekend, but he seemed like he was outpaced by Sainz pretty much all weekend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously getting run off the track twice doesn't help your cause, but by the end of the race, his tyres were shot anyway. Yeah. He had run long on those hard tyres, probably more laps on that tyre than the strategy probably called for.
Yeah.
And by the time Sainz caught him, it was academic.
Then in 9th was Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. He started a lot higher up on the grid, but he just seemed to have just petered out.
Yeah, but I mean, all the cars in front of him, both Ferraris, both McLarens, both Mercedes, and both Red Bulls. I mean, that's as good as you're going to get. I mean, without any retirements, that's probably an accurate reflection of the pecking order as we see it.
But it also does show how well he is getting that AlphaTauri to work.
He's squeezing the juice out of that thing as best he can.
Yeah.
Much more than Yuki Tsunoda has been, but I think that's Gillette, the best a man can get.
Yep.
For Pierre Gasly today.
Then in 10th was Fernando Alonso in the Alpine.
Yeah, he drove a pretty solid second stint on the hard tyre, cruelly robbing George Russell of a World Championship point with 3 laps to go.
He did go and see him once they pulled into Parc Ferme. He did go and see him, and
it's a race. You don't cede position or sit position out of sympathy for anyone.
No,
not especially a 2-time world champion like Fernando.
That's right. But it was a really impressive drive by George Russell in the Williams.
His whole weekend was incredible. The amount of performance he got out of that car, put it into Q3 for the first time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, ran out of steam or was caught 3 laps from the end by Fernando, which was probably the saddest story of the day, to be honest.
Yeah.
What more's this kid got to do to get a world championship point?
Yeah,
but I mean, if he's putting his audition in for a Mercedes seat, it's pretty damn. The last 2 weekends have been pretty damn good auditions. I mean, despite the engine problems last week, he was still 8,000th outside of Q3, and he was 8th when the Gremlin started.
Yeah.
He was top 10 for 68 of 71 laps last night. He's putting his best foot forward in an underpowered car. And he's all of his talent, 100% of his talent. And if that's what Toto's looking at, then, be keeping a good eye on him.
In 12th place is Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, talk about a guy running out of talent.
Yeah.
Here's the opposite. 2 5-second penalties. I didn't know this was a rule. For going over the white pit lane line on the entry.
Yeah, you've got to stay inside if you go into the pits, you've got to get inside the white line.
I thought that was only for the exit.
No, that's for the entrance as well.
It's such an awkward entrance at Austria, though. It's very high speed.
Yeah, because
it's a sharper angle.
Yeah, I think they need to do something about that corner, whether they peel off a little bit of the forest before the corner, so it's just a slight tilt into a new bit.
I feel like that pit entry could be down further, maybe around the corner.
Because it used to be.
Yeah, because it would be a tighter corner. You wouldn't have to be running through all that, like the sweep through the grass, but it'd also be sort of safer because pit entry is like the racing line through that corner. Anyway,
Yeah.
I always thought it was a very, very awkward pit lane entry there. So
Well, that led to a lot of issues during qualifying
yeah,
with cars banking up or cars going into the pit lane while other cars were on flying laps.
yeah, it's not a very good pit lane.
So
On a
I
short
think
track.
I think that's something that Red Bull, the company, should see, and they own the track. Something that they should invest in is trying to fix up that particular part of the track, because the rest of the track is just, chef's
It's a
kiss.
brilliant track.
You know,
That said, though, Yuki was the only one that got pinged for doing that. So
yeah,
most of the drivers knew how to. Even Mazepin and Schumacher, the rookies, the proper rookies, knew how to negotiate that pit entry. So
yeah.
not making excuses for Yuki. It is a very awkward pit entry, but
Well, just to spin off a little bit, like the Australian media is giving, and Paul Di Resta and that is giving Daniel Ricciardo a lot of grief and saying he's running out of excuses. I think Yuki Tsunoda is running out of excuses more than anyone else.
he came in with so much hype, and even we hyped him up,
Yeah,
and he's just not showing it lately. And I don't know what the problem is, but for a guy that came in with all this momentum out of Formula 2 to just not show it on race day consistently is not in the least for him disappointing.
I was just thinking then, if you put Mick Schumacher in that car, he would probably be out driving Gasly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So, whatever Tsunoda's doing, he's
I don't know
doing
what-
something.
Yeah, I don't know what sort of contract he's on or what his deal with AlphaTauri looks like, but
I don't think he's ever going to end up in a Red Bull.
No, absolutely not. Not at this rate.
I think he's got one more year in him
To try and prove it.
to try and prove that he is as good as he thinks he is.
Yeah, or else someone like Alexander Albon's going to come back down there and show him what for, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then in 13th, you've got Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Really was a meh race.
Yeah, it didn't have a whole lot of pace.
Yeah. 14th was Antonio Giovinazzi. Other than the first lap, which we'll get to that incident in a bit, other than that, he really had a meh day as well.
What with what he had?
Yeah.
What he has isn't a lot. I don't think the Alfa Romeo is particularly flash in a straight line, but
Yeah.
then again, neither was the Haas's. So
Yeah, but it's the halves.
yeah.
In 15th was Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. Latifi really does have to step up. Again, he's someone who is... The clock is winding down on him.
When you're being, and I know his teammate's George Russell, he's got all the talent in the world, which makes it worse for him. But he really, when's the last time you sat back and said Nicholas Latifi had an awesome day, an awesome
I
drive?
haven't.
Exactly.
He's only there because he's got money. He's got backing.
Yeah, he's like
He's a pay driver.
He's a less talented Lance Stroll.
Yeah. In 16th was Kimi Räikkönen in the Alfa Romeo, and in 17th was Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Now, the reason why I grouped them two together was they had a decent day until the final lap. But then, the last lap, and Kimi Räikkönen just had a brain fart or something. I don't know what happened.
It was a very awkward accident, but it was... and
But
laid the blame at Kimmy's feet on that one.
Yeah. And he
Very-
was the one swearing about Sebastian Vettel. It's like, no, Kimi,
Nah, man.
you're in the wrong this time, buddy.
Yeah, it wasn't a flash look for Kimmy. And it robbed Vettel because I can't quite remember, but they were a long way up the field. They might have been battling for the top 10 because they dropped a long way on the timing board on that last lap, I do remember.
Yeah, I think they would have been 12 and 13.
Yeah, I just remember them.
Yeah, because Kimi was trying to overtake Russell,
Yeah,
and Vettel was trying to overtake Kimi.
yeah,
And Kimi, I think, might have been the dirty air or something, but he's just turned a little bit too far to the right, and tagged the rear wheel of Vettel, and both of them went into the kitty litter.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to take back the racing line, but he had 3/4 of an Aston Martin in front of him. I don't know where he was planning on going.
It was very much the Michael Schumacher getting overtaken by Juan Pablo Montoya. And Montoya sitting there going, no, he didn't see me. He didn't see me. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Only an idiot would say I wasn't there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah,
He couldn't see me.
keeping a low profile after that one, Kimmy.
18th was Mick Schumacher in the Haas.
Yep.
19th was Nikita Mazepin in the other Haas. And the only retirement from the race was Esteban Ocon, who crashed out on the first lap.
Yes.
When he got squeezed between two cars. One of them was Antonio Giovinazzi, which broke his front suspension, and that was Ocon out.
Unlucky.
Turn 3 in the first lap.
Unlucky. I mean, not let down by his talent this time. Just squeezed out of room.
Yeah.
I mean, genuine accident. Just,
Racing incident. These things happen.
Yeah, he was the meat in the sandwich, and unfortunately, his suspension didn't like it.
Yeah. So we go through the events of the race, even though everyone's probably seen the race, but it's nice to go through the events of the race anyway. So on lap 1, obviously, Esteban Ocon was crashed out by Antonio Giovinazzi in a Formula 1 sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought out the safety car. Lap 4, the safety car comes in, and Norris overtakes Perez and pushes Perez wide.
Norris was ahead. I think Perez was trying to overtake Norris.
Correct.
Around the outside into turn 3, and Norris got his elbows out a little bit too far, I guess.
Was it turn 3 or turn 4?
What's the faster one? Turn 4.
Turn
I think
4.
it was turn 4. Yeah, according to the race director. I can't remember his name.
Michael Massey.
No, it wasn't Michael Massey. It was someone else this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Which is why I was a little bit more glad-handed than usual.
Oh, right.
His name escapes me now. I'll remember it after the podcast.
Yeah, we do our research on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But then lap 20 was when Norris was notified that he had the 5-second penalty for pushing Perez off the track.
Yeah, so it came a full 16 laps later, and not only that, the double whammy was he was actually passed by Lewis on the same lap.
Yeah.
Right about the same time he was notified of his penalty, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been a happy 30 seconds for him.
No. So then lap 31, Norris comes in and serves his 5-second penalty. And at the same time, Valtteri Bottas passes.
Covered him off. Was informed before the pit stop to follow Lando because he had the penalty, and did exactly that. And net gain was eventually second place.
Lap 41, Sergio Perez pushes Charles Leclerc off at turn 4, and Perez gets a 5-second penalty for it. And Leclerc wasn't too thrilled by it, but again, it was much like the Norris thing. Like, the move really wasn't on. The move isn't. I don't know why these drivers on turn 4 keep trying to go on the outside. It really is not a happening move. They should be trying to go for the undercut.
My only complaint, it was an identical sort of thing. Norris and Perez didn't touch, but as soon as Norris was handed the 5-second penalty, the precedent was set.
Yeah. At least
the precedent was set, and then Perez did make contact with Charles Leclerc. So from that point, it was a slam dunk. Like, you've set the precedent very early in the race, 4 laps into the race, that, there's going to be no squeezing of drivers into the gravel trap, obviously, today.
Yeah.
So
at least I will give the officials that they were consistent. Once they set the benchmark, that's it.
yeah, it wasn't a great bench for those who like a bit of wheel-to-wheel balls out racing. I guess it wasn't a great benchmark to be set, but
It was fair.
They were
It
consistent.
might have been
I guess.
wrong, but it was fair. It was consistent.
It was consistent. I wouldn't say it was overly fair.
So then we get to lap 47, and Perez pushes Charles Leclerc off again and gets another 5-second penalty. This time it was coming out of turn 5.
Yes.
Again, I don't know why people are going on the outside to try and overtake there, but
The outside of turn 5 is the more bizarre place than the outside of turn 4.
Yeah.
The outside of turn 4 makes sense because you're on the inside of turn 5 then, if you can make it stick.
But if you're on the outside of turn 5, you're on the outside of turn 6.
Yeah, it's left-hand corner, gravel, left-hand corner, right-hand corner, by which time you're either going to be in the gravel or on the grass or overtaken. Yeah, it was...
or in the wall.
Yeah, or spun off into the shadow realm, yeah.
So on lap 48, Lewis Hamilton, I write him as Hamo on my notes, okay. Lewis Hamilton gets damage going over the sausage curb on, was it turn 1?
It was turn 1, he went wide and skateboarded his car down the yellow sausage curb pretty much. Just grinded it. Apparently the left rear aero was damaged.
Oh, Jeff wouldn't have been happy about that. Would have told him to stay inside the track limits.
Neither was Toto apparently, but hey, or Bono.
Then we get to lap 52. Yeah, I can read my own writing. Lap 52, Valtteri Bottas passes Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, that was a strategic swap. Damaged. Was actually initially told to hold station.
Yeah.
Until Lewis was like, "No, I think I've got damage," because they were thinking championship. And Valtteri was initially told to hold station for about 3 or 4 laps.
They didn't use the words multi-21, did they?
They literally told him just to stay behind Lewis, like close the gap but don't overtake him.
Yeah.
Because they were thinking championship at that stage. The problem was Lando Norris was coming up behind them at a rate of knots.
Yeah.
And they were worried about Lando, so they let Valtteri through on Lewis to at least have one Mercedes cover off the McLaren.
And then a lap later, lap 53, Lando Norris passes Lewis Hamilton for 3rd place.
Brilliant move. Brilliant ballsy move on the inside of turn 5. On the outside of turn 4, on the inside of turn 5, but made it work, unlike Checo and Charles.
Yes.
Lando showed them how it's done.
Then on lap 68, Alonso passes George Russell for the last points playing position.
Also on lap 61, Max Verstappen stopped for the hard tyres. He had a pit stop advantage over Valtteri, so he bolted the hards on and went out and set the fastest lap to secure that championship point.
See, this is why you're on the show, because of your journalistic integrity. I missed that because it wasn't in the highlight package. So.
Because I stayed awake until 1 o'clock this morning watching it, the whole race, start to finish. Journalistic integrity and also stupidity, because I'm paying for it now. I'm very tired. I'm running on Hungry Jacks and caffeine.
and a nice cup of tea.
That's it.
Yes, for all those keeping score at home, we have a nice cup of tea before we do the podcast.
It's tradition now. It's tradition.
Yeah. Take that, Joe Rogan. And lap 71, the final lap, Carlos Sainz passed Daniel Ricciardo for 6th place on the listing.
Mm-hmm.
And Kimi decides to crash into Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit unlucky for Daniel Ricciardo. He did everything he could. He had every defense move in the book he could think of to try and keep Sainz behind. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, and Sergio must have slipped past him in the last sector of the lap as well.
But Sainz was let go by Charles Leclerc to overtake him.
He was rocketing on those mediums anyway, so there's not much he could have done.
As soon as Sainz passed Leclerc on the radio, he got on the radio and said, I said thank you.
Yeah, tell him thank you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all in all, I thought this was a really great race. I think the two races we've had in Austria at the Red Bull Ring, the Styrian and this one, have been just fantastic races.
This one was definitely the better of the two.
Oh, yeah.
You know, last week there was the DRS train, you know, sort of made it a bit stagnant and a bit boring. But this week, with the tyres going off and with multiple two-stop or one-stop strategies going on everywhere and, you know, big gambles, it was really exciting. It was a very good race to watch.
The thing is, the last three races have really shown what the younger guys, the new guys, the up-and-coming guys can do.
Yeah.
And some of them, like Max Verstappen, Norris, Sainz, Perez, Leclerc. I know I'm leaving Ricciardo out there.
Yeah, he hasn't quite found it yet.
But
and he's not exactly young either.
Those guys are showing like a new type of driver that is very similar to the guys from the 90s and the 80s and how they drove.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a renaissance.
It was. It was a renaissance. It was racing from a bygone era almost. It's just good to have a decent strategy battle again. It's not just a one-stop race. Because you get a one-stop race, everyone comes in and like within 5 laps of each other, and where you leave the pit lane is where you finish the race most times.
Yeah.
That's sort of what happened last week. But this week, you had people either finishing the race on soft tyres or medium tyres or hard tyres. You had all 3 compounds by the end of the race, you know, depending on where you were on the track.
Yeah.
You know, it was genuinely interesting. A lot of really good mid-pack battles, and there were 2 or 3 positions that weren't decided until the final lap of the race.
Yeah, that's what you want in racing.
Exactly. Like, Carlos didn't get past Daniel Ricciardo until the last lap. You know, Alonso got past Russell for the last championship point with about 2 laps to go. It was a race down to the last drop.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, the first 2 positions were, the podium positions were pretty much done 5 or so laps from the end. Like, Verstappen was gone. Bottas was comfortably ahead of Lando.
Well, Norris was catching Valtteri towards the end.
He was, and unfortunately,
he just ran out of laps.
Oh, that 5-second penalty cost him second place.
True.
Without a doubt. Which is the only frustration he can take away from this weekend, but everything else was just brilliant. Brilliant racing right down the field. Just strategy calls, you know. The DRS train didn't really work as well this weekend because people were like graining their tyres or all sorts, you know. It was, a really entertaining race.
Yeah. All right, so now we've gone through the race classification. Now it's time for our favourite segment of the show, pit stop talking points.
Ooh, question time.
So, some of the talking points. First of all, how awesome was that national anthem?
That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I mean,
can we get for COTA? Can we get like Metallica to do the American national anthem
with like monster trucks and shit?
Yeah, just really.
Austria was just like riffs and people jumping out of the sky and doing backflips and shit, and World War II planes doing barrel rolls, because you know it's Austria, and what's the first thing we think of when we think of Austria?
Niki Lauda.
I don't know. I didn't know where I was going with that. I was going to say Red Bull.
We think of Red Bull.
Red Bull, I guess, and Red Bull like doing crazy shit.
Yeah. Well.
I was very impressed actually. I was like, holy shit! I just liked how like Lewis and all the old like John Todd and all the old like dignitaries in their suits are standing there while this band is like shredding, dropping riffs on the national anthem, and everyone's sort of like awkwardly standing there like, what's happening?
But they get shots of the crowd. The crowd is just eating it up.
It's like a Euro 2020 crowd just dancing and jumping around like soccer fans. I tell you what, those Dutch fans, they had a party.
Oh, yeah.
I watch enough MotoGP. Valentino Rossi gets like full grandstands of yellow. Yeah. Max Verstappen's getting full grandstands of orange. It's crazy.
I think that highlights that outside of the UK and Aldas's YouTube channel, people are sick of Lewis goddamn Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton is not as popular outside of the UK than that people think. Hey, like he is the centre of of their world in England. But outside of the UK,
It's Mac's world.
Ricardo's massively popular. Max Verstappen's massively popular. Kimi Räikkönen has been popular for 2 decades.
But he doesn't really care.
He doesn't give a shit, which is why we love him. Yeah,
Kimi Räikkönen. You're the most popular driver in Formula One. How do you
Lando
feel about
Norris
that?
is getting himself a massive following, though.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, they had all those. Oh, pardon me. They had all those ads before the race last night, where it was McLaren promoting their internet provider.
The WebEx ad.
Yeah. And you don't even see Ricardo in the ad. It's just Zach Brown and Lando Norris.
No, you see Daniel. He's there.
Is he?
He does the thumbs up, thumbs down thing.
Oh, okay.
So, do you love it? You love it? You actually see a lot of Daniel in that ad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It must be the shortened version.
There might be 2 versions of that ad, but yeah. It's okay. It's sort of embarrassing in a dodgy acting sort of way, but I was more curious as to why McLaren was sponsored by Tomorrowland. the music festival known for its elaborate substance taking and Alice in Wonderland themed goodness.
I thought Tomorrowland was a movie.
No, Tomorrowland's the big festival. They have it in Belgium usually, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know of anything else sponsored.
Who knows?
Tomorrowland, usually in Austria or Belgium or somewhere crazy. Yeah, I was entertained by that. Anyway, do you have a question for me?
Well, the next story on our things that happened over the weekend is that Lewis Hamilton has signed a 2-year deal with Mercedes.
I'm genuinely surprised. I thought he was pulling the pin after this year.
Look, I thought he would have signed a 1-year deal, but he signed a 2-year deal, so...
He obviously... Do you think it's playing into his mind that maybe he knows this year he might not win the championship?
Yeah, I think he's actually reserved to the fact that he knows he's not going to be world champion this year.
And he's going to... Well, if he's signing a 2-year deal, so it's to the end of 2023, right?
Yep.
That gives him 2 bites at the cherry with the 2022 regulated car.
Yeah.
So I think this year he's probably resigned to the fact that he might not be world champion. Or it's going to take a lot of luck for him to become world champion now. I mean, anything can happen. It's Formula One. But...
Well, if Hamilton is going to be world champion this year, he's got to do it on the track because, unfortunately, Toto Wolff has run out of things to bitch about that Red Bull car.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got to do it on the track now.
Yeah, he's going to have to genuinely win some races.
And I don't think he's got the car underneath him to be able to achieve that.
Not compared to the Red Bull at this stage, no. And if Mercedes are planning an upgrade of any sort in the near future, I haven't heard a peep about it.
Well, apparently...
Lewis Hamilton came out last week and said, I can't remember the last time this car got an upgrade.
And they actually said that they're not upgrading the car.
Yeah, they said they're not spending any more money on this year's car. Which is very odd when you're right in the middle of a championship fight. I mean, fair enough. Everyone's going to have to, and early in this season, they're just going to have to stop and start developing the 2022 car because it's a completely ground up brand new car.
Well, whereas Red Bull are still developing this year's car.
Red Bull have a few more left. I think Aston just put a big upgrade on theirs this weekend. They did. Do you see on their Halo? They had this weird aero bump on the Halo that they've redone their floor and they've redone their aero. Not that it helped.
No.
Not that it helped at all, but, there's still a few teams. And that's the other thing. That's the other interesting point this year. How many more teams are going to throw things at this year's car?
Well,
knowing that there's,
Ferrari has said they're not working on this year's car anymore. They've already started work on next year's car.
They're right in the... See, that's the same thing. They're right in the neck of the fight with McLaren.
But I think hearing that from Ferrari is going to get McLaren to go, you know what, we're not going to develop our car anymore. We're just going to start working on next year's car.
Yeah,
if I heard that, I would sit there and go, I'm going to develop next year's car because I know my nearest opposition.
But they say that, and then they bring out an upgrade in 3 races, and suddenly you got egg on your face.
Well,
I can't sit here and believe that Mercedes don't have anything left for this year's car this early.
Yeah, well,
What
I mean,
race is this? 9? Round 9?
round 10.
Something like that. We're what? Into a 21 or 22 race season.
I think it's 22.
Right. So we're not even halfway, and you're
Yeah.
and you're giving up on the car. I can't believe that there isn't, big or small. There's got to be something in the pipeline.
Well, they can't upgrade the engine.
No, they can't. But there's got to be something. Well, Red Bull's engine upgrade too. It wasn't just a new power unit. Apparently, they did a reliability. Because remember they had those electrical gremlins at the start of the year? They did a reliability overhaul on their car, and it actually wound up giving them 10 more horsepower.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know how they managed to do that, but it was all for the sake of reliability and getting over those electrical gremlins. And all of a sudden, the Honda's pumping out 10 more ponies.
And that's something that Ferrari is working on with next year's car, is a whole brand new power unit.
Yeah.
Reconfiguring the combustion engine and the turbo positioning.
So are they allowed to just go hell for leather next year on the engines and everything next year? Or
Yeah.
are they limited? Or have they got the token rule?
No. Hell for leather.
Yeah?
But what they start the year with, engine-wise, they are stuck with until the end of 2024. Engine parity.
So if you get it wrong
You're
from the
stuck.
start, you're stuck for 4 years with that engine.
Yeah.
Surely no. Surely if it's a dog box, you'd be able to, like the wind tunnel testing thing.
I think they...
Like the crapper teams surely would be, if it turns out to be a disaster, like a 2015 McLaren, like an utter shit box, you'd be able to, develop the engine.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Red Bull was pushing for engine parity because they've got to develop it themselves now. They're not a customer. They're not getting
They're
it
pushing for engine parity, and they've come out with the best engine of 2021.
Yeah, well...
It's like, well, now everyone has to catch up to you. Congratulations.
But because they don't have the resources of the Ferraris and the Mercedes and the Renaults, because they don't have Honda anymore, because they own the IP, they can't build their own engine from scratch. They've got to sort of work on what they've got and just upgrade it and make it better.
Yeah, okay. Which I guess is where the salary cap comes in.
Yeah.
The $145 million cap.
I think though, if a team is if a power unit supplier is doing that badly, the FIA should be allowed to sit there and say, "Look, let them come up."
I think they will. I think
Yeah.
they will. Like, the whole point of this overhaul is to stop teams winning 7 championships in a row.
Yeah.
Because we're over it. Because let's not forget, Mercedes won 7 on the trot. Before that, Red Bull won 4 on the trot.
And before that, Ferrari won 5 in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Going back to the Schumacher era in the early 2000s.
And that's why they brought in the no changing tires in 2005.
Yeah, whenever it gets to a point that someone's dominating, we have to change the rules.
Yeah.
To try and spice it up again. So, yeah, let's not forget, the last 20 years of Formula One have been, 3 constructors winning championships?
Yeah.
Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes, and that's pretty much it. McLaren got a couple in there, and Renault got 2. But outside of that, that's about it.
Yeah.
Everything else was those 3 constructors, so... the whole point of next year's regulations is to make Formula 1 look like Formula 2 and just have 3 cars wide every lap into every corner. They want exciting racing again.
Yeah, that's right. They want the cars to be able to follow each other.
Exactly, because you can watch a bog standard last year or whatever, 2019 Formula 1 race, because it would happen. MotoGP and Formula 1 would be on the same night. And MotoGP had pushed their race forward an hour to get it done before Formula 1. So you'd sit there and watch MotoGP and you'd watch lead changes for 28 laps. And it's exhilarating. And then you turn it over and Lewis wins by 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's just, not in the same ballpark in terms of excitement.
Yeah.
So, something has to be done, and that's not discounting anything from this year. Like, I don't think has there been a bad race this year? Like a properly bad race?
Either Spain or Portugal.
Yeah, right.
They were kind of boring.
Yeah, but that was still, but mid-pack wise, I mean, compared to the last couple of seasons, I think up and down the grid, this is the closest it's been
Yeah.
to proper parity racing
Yeah.
for a long time. And if it further improves next year with these regulation changes, it can only be a good thing for the sport.
Okay, next news story was also something that happened in Austria on the weekend. So the engine supply or engine manufacturers in Formula One got together with the FIA and with Ross Brawn and Stefano Domenicali from Formula One to discuss what they're going to do with the power units from 2025.
Mm-hmm.
With topics being that they're going to introduce biofuels like ethanol, like what we have in Australian supercars.
Yep. Yeah, but is it bio or is it fully synthetic? It doesn't use oil. Is that what they mean?
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But they were also talking about what they can take off from the power unit to make them cheaper. Which is my question to you. The four main components of a power unit are the combustion engine, the turbo, the MGUH, and the MGUK.
Yep.
With the MGUK being the kinetic energy recovery.
Yep.
And the MGUH being the heat from the turbo.
Yep.
If you were to make the engines cheaper, what would you take off?
You'd take off the MGUH and the MGUK.
Well, you've got to still keep them hybrid. So I'd take off the MGUH.
Yeah, you don't really need to cycle. How much heat really is produced by the turbo? I mean, how much of it, I'm not an engineer, how much of it is actually being used as recoverable energy? I think you'd get a lot more kinetic energy out of the brakes, to be honest.
Yeah, that's where the kinetic energy comes from, is from the brakes.
Yeah, you'd get a lot more heat and kinetic energy out of the brakes than you would just out of the turbo.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for they're probably going to have to sit down and talk. Did they talk to any potential?
Well, that's my next story.
Yeah, right.
That is my next story. So it's funny you should mention that, because the teams that were there, or the engine suppliers that were there, I've got to get that right. The engine suppliers that were there. So Toto Wolff representing Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
John Elkann representing Ferrari. He is the president of Ferrari. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try, but the president of Renault was there. Dietrich Mateschitz from Red Bull was there representing Red Bull and Red Bull powertrains. Obviously, Stefano Domenicali and Ross Brawn from Formula One representing Liberty Media.
Yep.
And Jean Todt representing the FIA.
Yep.
Now, I don't know the name of the person or persons, but there was a representative from Audi and a representative from Porsche there. This has got me excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering Porsche and Audi both already have vast amounts of experience in making endurance engines and hybrid systems for...
Well, that's right, because Audi has announced that they're returning to World Endurance Championship.
Yep.
And Porsche is working on a secret project with Roger Penske Motorsport.
A secret project with Penske.
Now, I'm pretty sure that's not Formula One. I think that might be something to do more with Porsche possibly entering either IndyCar or NASCAR.
That would be something. Maybe.
Or
I would lean towards IndyCar in that case.
Or Roger Penske going into endurance.
Yeah.
Or, this is the longest odds, but what if Porsche was thinking about something like, I don't know, Australian supercars. Because Penske has got Dick Johnson Racing.
Well, they've already got the Carrera Cup here, though. That full Porsche category.
But it's... and I think when the hybrid era started, Porsche actually developed a V6 turbo
didn't
hybrid.
they bring out their own... So they've already...
And they threw it on the dyno, apparently.
Yeah.
It would have been... You remember back in the day when BMW was in Formula One and they had their V10 that was like the most
that is
powerful.
Like probably my favourite V10 engine, to be completely honest.
Well, imagine that as a V6 turbo hybrid and it was developed by Porsche. That's the equivalent of it. It was just earth-shattering how much power this thing is. And then they shelved the project because the FIA was going to get rid of the MGU-H to make everything cheaper. And at the 11th hour, the FIA turned around and said, no, we're going to keep it because the other teams have spent so much money developing that technology that it's wasting money by getting rid of it.
Yep.
And Porsche pulled out.
Well, to get back to the basis of your question, if Audi and Porsche are the two interested parties, you would have to ask them first and foremost, probably before anyone else, because if the point of this is to get two more engine suppliers or two more teams into Formula One, they need to be the ones you ask first. What would you like to see removed from the current power unit as a cost-cutting measure, but not necessarily a performance-cutting measure? What would you rather see go? I would say probably the heat unit.
Yeah.
It seems a little, again, not an engineer, seems to be the lesser of the two.
Yeah.
You could generate a lot more power through braking energy.
Yeah, that's right.
And if the MGU-H was what they were initially going to get rid of, why not? Now's the time.
Yeah, well, they're talking about it for 2025.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, but that's it. If you want your answer and you want to attract new customers, you need to put the feelers out there and ask directly, what do the new customers want? And if it's a unanimous answer, then you've got to go back to the table to the current teams and say, this is what they want. Are you guys happy with that? And you can either say yes or no for the betterment of the sport, for a wider variety of suppliers and worldwide, internationally recognised marks. If it's what Porsche and Audi want, and it could be the introduction of 4 new cars on the grid, maybe you sort of got to bend your will a little bit and let it happen.
Well, I have a little bit of a theory on this, okay? I think that the reason why Audi in particular is at the table talking about this is 2025, we're talking about the regulations. I think Audi is going to take over as engine supplier for Red Bull and for AlphaTauri.
Yeah?
Because they've got 3 years of engine parity where they're building the engines themselves. They're going to need someone to take over once that engine parity stuff is over. Who better than Audi?
How early do Porsche and Audi get their answer as to what the 2025 engine will look like? Because they're going to need a couple of years to develop their own engines.
End of this year.
Right. That's very interesting. Yeah.
It's got me excited.
Yeah, it does.
You could see perhaps teams like Aston Martin losing the Mercedes engine and going to something, I suppose, thinking about it now, because all the Aston Martin road cars now are powered by Mercedes. They're not making their own engines.
Right.
The actual road car company.
Yeah.
So
maybe they will stick with Mercedes, but there's plenty of other teams out there that could potentially switch.
But then it leads to the idea of, what if the Porsche Roger Penske motorsport partnership leads to Penske joining Formula One. You could see Penske versus Haas on the Formula One grid.
Yeah, as well.
Because we've been seeing it on the IndyCar grid and the NASCAR grid
Yep.
for a very long time. They're
Yep.
almost natural rivals.
Well, they are.
And
they're the two most... Well,
and Haas Automation supplies all their stuff to Red Bull Racing in Australian supercars.
yeah.
So it leads to another tantalising battle on the track.
A lot of potential coming up after this year.
And it could encourage other new teams to come in as well. It
Or
could
old teams. We could get BMW back. We could get Toyota back.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
could get... Well, no, we wouldn't get Honda back. Honda's going.
Yeah.
But we could get Toyota back.
Yeah.
We could get BAR.
Yeah, well, it's very tantalising. It's making my mouth water.
Yeah, the
you know.
potential is there.
You could
Can you
actually
imagine
get...
having a 30-car grid?
You couldn't have a 30-car grid, though.
You could have... What's the max? 24?
24.
Yeah, right.
Maybe 26.
Mm.
But if they have more than... I think it's more than 24, they'd have to have pre-qualifying, like back in the 80s.
Yeah, no, that's too much of a shit show. It'd have to be 24 then.
But could you imagine, say, ART racing or Campos racing from GP2
Yeah.
making the jump up to Formula One?
Powered by a Audi engine or a Porsche engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Potential. All the potential in the world is there.
And combine that with the cost cap that's being brought into Formula One,
Yep.
which is a way of bringing new teams into the sport and making the grid more seats for drivers, more opportunities.
Well, that's how it happens in MotoGP. A bunch of these Moto2 teams eventually acquire the backing, not of the factory, they're a customer team, but they eventually acquire the backing of a Honda or a Yamaha or a Suzuki to develop their own MotoGP bike.
Yeah.
And if that could happen to a Carlin or a Dams or an ART, to acquire the backing from Porsche and some financial backing to develop a Formula One car team, you know, the potential's there. You could get Carlin and ART up into the top tier, powered by an Audi and a Porsche engine, and you know, there's your 24-car grid.
Yeah.
With a team that's already experienced in running the junior formulas.
And it also means that drivers like Nick De Vries...
Exactly.
And
then that's the pathway for the Formula 2 guys.
Yeah.
You know, even the current Formula 2, if Carlin had two drivers and then we're like, right, we finally got enough to develop a Formula 1 car and a Formula 1 team, so you two boys can step up with us, or the lead driver can step up with another driver from the market up into Formula 1. And then it's another 4 young, fast drivers on the grid.
And it's like a work experience. Like they're on the grid. It's very much like AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
AlphaTauri being, you know, the Red Bull B team.
Yep.
You know, they're doing their work experience. It's sink or swim.
All these guys that go out in FP1 now, Guan Yu Zhou went out, Callum Ilott went out for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
This is the pathway for them. This is like, all right, well, you boys have been testing F1 cars. You've been our test drivers. You've been our FP1 drivers. You've got enough experience now to we'll put you in this works team and see what you got in a full season. See how you go with it. And it's only for the betterment of the sport. It's more pathways in.
It's not just the drivers though. Like you get technical staff.
Yeah, you get Audi and Porsche and whoever else wants to come in learning how to make these hybrid power units. And then that information can be passed on to more potential customers. And all of a sudden we could have 6 or 8 engine suppliers on the grid.
It's also like technical directors, like young and up-and-coming technical directors and team principals.
Yeah, people who have been sort of toiling away in the system and are wanting to make that next step, but maybe can't jump up because Toto's there, or the established guys are there. But then you can get this fresh perspective of new and up and coming tech guys and team principals and CEOs that want to take the reins of a Formula One team.
Well, that reminds me of Adrian Newey when he was at Williams. Like, he designed all those cars, including the one that killed Ed. And I mean, Adrian Newey is a technical wizard.
Adrian Newey designed 1998, 99 McLaren as well.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that's why he left and went to McLaren, because he knew he would never be the number one technical director at Williams while Patrick Head was still there.
Yep.
So he rolled the dice and went to McLaren, and then eventually rolled the dice and went to Red Bull.
Yep, and won more championships.
That's right.
He won 2 at McLaren and he won 4 at Red Bull. And who knows how many of those types of people are in the paddock now,
and
just waiting for their chance.
The same thing happened with James Key, who is the current technical director at McLaren.
Yep.
He was the technical director at AlphaTauri, and he kept getting told, "Oh, Adrian Newey's going to be retiring soon. He's going to be retiring soon." So he had eyes on the Red Bull technical director spot, but Newey doesn't want to retire. So he made a choice to go, well, I can stay here at AlphaTauri, or there's a spot at McLaren, and they're rebuilding the team from scratch.
Yep.
I'm going to roll the dice on McLaren.
Yep.
And look at how good that car is now.
Oh, the stars aligned at that team, though. Young Lando Norris, Zach Brown, Andrea Seidel,
Yeah.
and James Key just all came together. And it's starting to pay off. Not quite there, but starting to pay off.
Even the technical restructuring at Ferrari is paying off.
Yeah, they've built that car back up too.
Yeah.
You know, and who knows?
Because a lot of the Ferrari's problem with their technical stuff and even with their driver selection was all based around Sergio Marchionne's orders. He wanted X amount of things done his way.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that they were the wrong way to go about it. I mean, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here. Charles Leclerc was brought up to Ferrari a season too early. He had one season at Alfa Romeo, and he was brought up too early.
Yeah, he was, but I mean, he's found his feet now, sort of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he got in the car and he proved right away that he was good for it. But maybe if he needed a little bit more seasoning down south.
Yeah.
I think it was just more of a case of Sergio Marchionne trying to get the younger people in and get Kimi out.
Yeah, they were already here and now driver. So.
You know, and then Sergio Marchionne died, and John Elkann took over.
Yeah.
And he's just fulfilling the last wishes of Sergio, but now he's put everything into Mattia Binotto's wheelhouse and said, "It's your team, you run it, we will back you however you want." And he's sitting there restructuring it, and it's making a better car for it.
Exactly, and you know, if 2025 proves that we're going to get new suppliers and new teams in, there could be technical directors in this sport waiting for their opportunity. There could be people outside of this sport waiting for their opportunity to get in.
Yeah.
The new Adrian Newey could be sitting anywhere, and we could find him in 5 years if enough agreements are reached.
But it also could lead to the return of guys like Eric Boulier.
Yeah, it could.
You know, it could be like a second chance for him.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, he did really well at Lotus, and then like we point the finger at him when it comes to his time at McLaren. But I don't think it's entirely his fault what happened.
That was a very, very disjointed team when he got there.
Yeah.
He had the aging Jenson Button, the desperation pitch to get Fernando Alonso for whatever reason, and then the Honda debacle. That was just a series of unfortunate events.
He inherited Ron Dennis's big bag of shit.
Yeah, like that team, even in like 2014, 13, even in the last years of the Mercedes engine, that team was on the downward spiral even from then. the Button Magnussen era, the Perez era. It was beginning to spiral even before Boullier got there.
It kind of started falling apart as soon as Hamilton left.
It really did. It really did. Hamilton left for Mercedes in 2013, and it was the beginning of a very sharp and sudden spiral.
Yeah.
But goes a fresh influx of blood, young drivers, a new CEO, new technical director, new racing director,
And a plane taking off in the background.
Yeah, the plane taking off into the night sky like McLaren's Fortune's taking off.
Oddly enough, I think that plane is running a Mercedes engine too.
They're usually Rolls-Royce engines, aren't they? I don't know.
Are they?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think Qantas
okay.
runs Rolls-Royce engines.
Oh, okay.
Possibly, I could be completely wrong. I don't care.
Rolls-Royce, aren't they owned by Volkswagen?
Probably.
No. Bentley is owned by Volkswagen.
Doesn't Volkswagen own everything and Fiat own
Well,
the rest?
Volkswagen owns Audi and Porsche and Bugatti and Ducati and Lamborghini, but they're trying to sell Lamborghini.
I thought Audi owned Lamborghini.
Yeah, but Audi's owned by Volkswagen.
Would Volkswagen get into Formula One? I guess they don't have to. They just use their off branches.
Through Audi and
Through
Porsche.
Audi and Porsche, there you go. Beetle engines.
Actually, I think Rolls-Royce is owned by... I think it's owned by BMW, I think.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It was a good
it's
offshoot. Research is key in this show.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, at least we keep the conversation authentic.
That's right. No scripts here, mate.
So we're gonna go through the constructors result, the drivers and constructors for this race. See, there's no Jamie here. We're not like Joe Rogan where we've got Jamie who can
Young
sit there and-
Jamie can whiz it up. You are
Yeah.
the slightly...
I've got to be the Joe Rogan and the Jamie.
You're the slightly older Jamie.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, mate.
So the 2021 driver standings after the Austrian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen is leading the championship on 182 points. Lewis Hamilton is second with 150 points. Sergio Perez is in third with 104 points. Lando Norris is on 101 points in fourth. Valtteri Bottas is in fifth on 92. Charles Leclerc is in sixth on 62 points. Carlos Sainz is in seventh on 60 points. Daniel Ricciardo is in eighth on 40. Pierre Gasly is nipping at his heels in ninth with 39 points. And Sebastian Vettel is on 30 points.
I'm
coming
genuinely surprised to see an Aston Martin driver in the top 10.
10th. I'm surprised to see Gasly in the top 10 as well.
Yeah, it's actually crazy.
And in the constructors, Red Bull is leading with 286 points. Mercedes is in second with 242 points. McLaren is in third with 141. Ferrari is in fourth with 122. AlphaTauri is in fifth with 48. Aston Martin is in sixth with 44. Alpine is in seventh with 32. Alfa Romeo is in eighth with 2 points. Williams is in ninth with 0 points. And Haas is on rock bottom with 0 points.
Poor Williams. They were so close. They were so close.
They could have genuinely had a point and genuinely be in ninth spot.
There's three really good... Well, there's like 4 really good battles going on there, hey. Red Bull and Mercedes are having their title fight. McLaren and Ferrari are real close. AlphaTauri, Aston Martin and Alpine are close. And then Romeo, Alfa Romeo, Williams and Haas, yeah. Alfa Romeo is not going to get many more points if Kimi keeps beaching it every 3 races.
That was going to be a question for tonight, but I think I'll leave it for the next episode about Kimi. But like Red Bull and Mercedes look like they're fighting for the WWE title. McLaren and Ferrari are fighting for the Intercontinental title. AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, Alpine seem to be fighting for the tag titles. And Alfa Romeo, Williams and Haas seem to be fighting for the 24/7 title.
That's it. Any wrestling fans out there would get that. Also, don't forget to check out the next episode of Stop the Damn Match podcast.
Which should be up... When is?
Whenever the next pay-per-view is.
Yeah, we're not going to promote that on here.
Yeah,
This is Formula One.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you for tuning in this week. We will see you in 2 weeks' time for the British Formula One race from Silverstone.
Yes, I'm very interested. It's going to be full capacity for the first time
Yes.
since the pandemic.
Yeah, as my dog goes off again at the damn possum. What are your predictions on it?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I mean, Lewis is going to want to put his best foot forward at his home race, without a doubt. But I don't think the Mercedes has enough in it to catch the Red Bulls at the moment. I don't know. I mean, it's a completely different track to Austria, obviously. But, I mean, Mercedes weren't able to catch the Red Bull at Paul Ricard either, which is, there's a lot of high-speed corners and slow-speed corners. Looking forward to see what Lando Norris can do. I think Lando's going to be wanting to put on a good one in front of his home crowd as well. But I think it's going to be more of the same. It's going to be Red Bull versus Mercedes for the top spots, McLaren versus Ferrari for the possible 4th, 5th, 6th, or the scratch for the podium if something goes wrong. I think it's going to be another fairly interesting weekend of racing, to be honest.
I think the weather will play into it, depending on whether it's dry or wet, like it always does.
Yeah.
But if it's a dry race, I think Max is going to walk away with it.
Yeah, I think Red Bull's got too much for the Mercedes at the moment. It's just a matter of, of weather. I think it will need to be a wet race to play, to sort of even the field out. But yeah, you're right. If it's not a wet race, I think the Red Bull's still got too much.
Yeah.
But time will tell. Lewis will want to give it his all for his home fans. So we'll see.
And for the boys back at the factory.
And
the amazing fans. Anyway, so thank you for tuning in this week. We will see you in 2 weeks' time for the British Formula One race from Silverstone. On behalf of my broadcast partner JB and myself, it is a goodbye.